Hello, beloveds, and welcome back to another episode of Why Is That? People just don't care about facts anymore. We kind of live in a post-truth society. Why is that? Today we'll be looking at the Podesta WikiLeaks, email leaks. I'm joined in the studio today by James Davison.
G'day.
Best known for being James Davison.
It's one hell of a compliment. Cheers, mate.
Okay, now, just starting, I don't trust the media. I just looked into a lot of their stories over the years, and it just hasn't panned out, including being aware of somebody trying to go to the media over basically a sex scandal, and what you'd think was all the recipe was there, and the media just not wanting to touch it. The media are not your friends. They're not doing a public service. They're not balanced. And if you look at the American election, they are so biased. Now, this is a social commentary show. We will be talking about the American election till after the American election, mainly because politics is downstream from culture. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, sure. Politics is a very interesting subject that many of us don't really like to touch for many different reasons, eh?
You shouldn't talk about religion or politics.
Oh, oops. Wrong place.
Although I've got a political studies degree and a theology degree, so I never got the memo.
I drive ships.
So, now the American election has gotten interesting with a number of allegations of a sexual nature against Donald Trump. What is amazing is the media isn't touching the number of allegations of a sexual nature against Bill Clinton. They're refusing to cover it, including when Hillary, who's actually the presidential candidate, is implemented in covering it up. Yes, you'd think Bill being a, straight white male would be, the feminists would be out, but I think maybe we got it all wrong. A lot of people accuse Obama of being a secret Muslim. Maybe that's Bill. Maybe that's how I can get away with it in the whole social justice warrior thing, and why the Middle East gives him millions and millions of dollars.
Now that is something I would like to see. I can't imagine it, but you never know what people get up to behind closed doors.
Well, that's a good segue into the Podesta emails, because...
oh, did someone say sex scandal?
Yes, and these are covered in the emails. We basically there's being what's not being covered in the media is the email leaks, which show what goes on behind closed doors, which you'd think a lot of people would be interested in, but nope. A whole lot of convenient allegations against Trump just are convenient, even though of half a dozen women, 2 of them are Hillary supporters and big donors. 2 of them multiple emails to the Trump campaign to come to Trump's attention, and when they didn't, well, now there's the allegations. And 2 more if you look at Stefan Molyneux's channel, he covers it, all the allegations. We really want to make sure we get on to the covering the emails, because there's a lot to cover. Oh, okay. So now talking about Bill, interestingly, just to cover, John Podesta is one of Hillary's top campaign people. So a lot of these emails just,
never would see the light of day.
No, but, gives a very good background. Now, there's one to do with Bill. It states, I have multiple email exchanges with someone in the media this morning, a name you would know, who is telling me that there are people close to the Clintons who say Bill's sex life could be damaging to her. I responded, I totally disagree with that. That Bill's presidency and his personal appearance appeal are huge assets that I do not believe people who are closest to them would see this person in the media and hear it from someone. Maybe I misread that, but basically, Bill's sex life is, was a concern. They also had email leaks from Colin Powell, who stated, Hillary's a friend of mine. She screws up everything she touches with her hubris, and also Bill's still dicking bimbos. Was the
I think this
quote.
sounds like a very, very good presidential candidate, wouldn't you agree?
Well, it's very democratic if you look back through the history of like JFK and Lyndon Johnson and, of course, Bill Clinton, who, with his current, 24 women allegating him.
Is that all?
Yeah. I did not have sexual relations with those women. Trust me, would I lie about something like that?
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Cross his fingers behind his back.
Oh. But,
I'm sure he wasn't complaining at the time.
there was a brilliant meme that I saw today. It's like, I'm with her, which is Hillary's campaign slogan. And I was with her and her and her. They had a picture from the presidential debates where they Trump brought women with allegations against him there, and they had that. Do you see that picture of that side steer?
I've probably seen it before.
Yes, it's. But of course, you will not hear about this in the media. A lot of millennials, such as James,
Hi.
may not have heard about Bill Clinton's past indiscretions, and we're not even just talking about rape allegations. We're also talking about mistresses.
It's all ancient history, mate.
Because, this happened in the early 90s, and we're 20 years later, so we have a generation who, even if they were small children at the time, would be in their mid to late 20s. No idea.
No, I mean, for something that happened a long time ago, I guess it's not something that we really, really think of or really has any effect on our lives, and as a result, doesn't really sway us, or at least the vast majority of us anyway.
It's funny when Trump brought this up at the presidential debate, because a lot of people would be like, what? Googling it.
First time for everything?
Yeah. Now, the second one, a lot of allegations against Hillary's health, that she has Parkinson's or some other health condition. Now,
Oops, I fell down and touched the nuclear button. Goodbye.
It's quite... she denied it. One of her rallies, she said, dream on, Donald, dream on. And at the September 11th memorial...
I saw a video of that where there's a video of her being dragged out in one of those presidential cars with a bunch of bodyguards covering her.
Yeah, it shows her collapsing. They've got all her people around her, including two women on both sides, to make sure she doesn't fall either way. And a whole lot of other men getting the car ready, and then she collapses. I mean, just like completely, and they just throw her in the car. Nobody looks fazed. This is the big thing. None of her, staff members and bodyguards, etc., look fazed by this. Throw her in, drive off. One of her shoes fell off and is on the curb. They had to send the New York Police Department to go and retrieve that.
Now that is an interesting story.
They had a lot of Cinderella memes around it.
Wouldn't her Prince Charming be pleased?
But in the Podesta emails, you have one that's got the line, hard to think of anything more counterproductive than demanding Bernie's medical records. Now, of course, in the primaries, she ran against Bernie Sanders, who was, he's old. He was in his late 70s or something.
I think around 1850s for a birth date.
But basically, what they did with John McCain, going, he's probably too old, we want to see his medical records. But, why would it be counterproductive asking for Bernie's medical records?
Well, I think we saw the proof in the pudding of that at a later date.
Yes, it's the reciprocation factor. Um, Now, if you're wondering, to touch on again, why we're talking about this is why isn't the media talking about this? As covered in previous shows, the New Zealand media gets a lot of its talking points and footage from the US. So if they've got a very biased and, frankly, I would say corrupt media, well, ours is just going to be following suit.
Yeah, because there's a lot of funding that goes, donations and such and so on, which go back and forth between Clinton Foundation and various media outlets. But it's also interesting in what is displayed in the media is essentially who buys it. I mean, why would you run a story in the media, say, defaming Hillary, when everyone who is interested in Trump would be more interested in seeing scandals brought against him? I mean, there's many different factors in there as well. Because we can see that with the amount of shit on TV in New Zealand. I mean, I wouldn't want to watch MasterChef, but a lot of people do.
It does disturb me, MasterChef. I stopped watching TV ages ago. Now, getting back to the Podesta emails, they seem to suggest some skullduggery behind the scenes in the Democratic National Committee, which we covered in our first show with the first WikiLeaks that came out, basically showing they rigged it for Hillary over Sanders, who had mass appeal, I would say. He was both sides wanted really an anti-establishment candidate, and
yeah, I mean, because Sanders he was very extreme, but the amount of support he had was quite surprising, considering that Clinton herself is a very mainstream candidate.
I think the big thing is free stuff.
Oh, free stuff is certainly a big appeal, but as you mentioned, the anti-establishment role is huge nowadays, and I mean, we've seen this with how popular Trump is also, because he is, well, from what we know, he is clearly not the establishment candidate, because if you look around, there is very few, at least popular sources, which do like him. Not necessarily meaning he's good or bad, simply the lack of support, which was previously seen in previous elections for the Republican candidate, is simply not there.
Well, the Democratic establishment is against him. The Republican establishment is against him. The mainstream media is against him.
What if he's a plant? Good old conspiracy theories, eh?
Oh, yes. But just to fill in some backstory about how sorted, because you can just follow in the news and just you get this very sanitized narrative. The person who helped rigged it against Bernie was Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who used to work for Clinton, and when this all came out and she got fired, she got immediately rehired by Clinton. But the person that was head of the Democratic National Committee, who stepped down for Debbie Wasserman Schultz and recommended her to make sure she got the job, just happens to be Hillary's vice presidential running mate.
What a coincidence.
Indeed. But with a lot of Democrats wanted Joe Biden to run, who's the current vice president. And, they were hoping and they were asking, because Hillary wasn't very popular. Bernie Sanders was popular, but the establishment didn't like him. But in the Podesta emails, there's a email from Ron Klavan to John Podesta, who Ron Klavan used to be part of Joe Biden's inner circle, but now is working for the Hillary campaign. And so the email reads, this is after the first debate, "She was great last night. Thanks for inviting me into the campaign and for sticking with me during the Biden anxiety. You're a great friend and great leader. It's been a little hard for me to play such a role in Biden's demise, and I'm definitely dead to them, but I'm glad to be on team RHC," which is Hillary Rodham Clinton, "and glad she had a great debate last night. Thanks, John."
That's an interesting choice of words. unfortunately, you can't really conclude anything from it, but we can only speculate, and that is certainly what we can and have been doing.
So yeah, it's what Biden demise? Why is he all of a sudden dead to Biden's? Because a lot of these politicians, have a whole lot of administration behind them themselves. Why is he dead to them? What did he do? And
That is a good question. Do we have any ideas?
we may never know, but it does seem to suggest that Biden was somehow kept out of becoming a contender. Okay, actually, what should have been the first email we covered? Oh, I can't believe I overlooked this. Is one that's from to John Podesta from Big Global Cultural Strategies. Basically talking about about how the email starts off as, well, we all thought the big problem for our US democracy was Citizens United and the Koch brothers, big money in politics, which has been a big talking point by people like Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart, when they were around.
Most definitely.
And they're talking about how Hillary Clinton is not an entertainer and Trump masters TV, but the most damning bit in it is sort of midway through.
Because, it starts off as how Hillary Clinton is supposed to combat celebrity politics, because we all know Trump is, or at least acts like, a celebrity, whereas Hillary Clinton isn't necessarily as comfortable in front of a camera, so obviously her campaign needs a way to overcome this.
Well, they hired Steven Spielberg.
Oh, really?
To work with her to make her more likable.
This is news to me.
And apparently he admitted defeat. He's just like, I just can't do it.
Or did you see the episode of South Park where they have to get J.J. Abrams to reboot the national anthem? So instead of at the start, you must now stand for the national anthem of America, and it plays the music. He revamps it, and sorry if you haven't seen this episode yet, spoilers. He fixes it by saying, you may now stand, or sit, or take a knee for the national anthem of America.
Whatever.
Fun fact.
Yes. Oh, I highly recommend this season of South Park. To date. I don't know what's coming out. Okay, but back to what's considered the important bit. And actually, this is the most damning indictment. We should have covered it first. As I've mentioned, we've all been quite content to demean government, drop civics, and in general conspire to produce an unaware and compliant citizenry. The unawareness remains strong, but compliance is obviously fading rapidly. This problem demands some serious thinking, and not just poll-driven, demographically inspired messaging. So, yes, basically, the voters are dumb and have done what they've been told, and they're still dumb, but now they're not doing as they're told.
This obviously people clearly have not changed since the Roman days. Bread and circuses is obviously still a thing. Yeah. Well, is very definitely still a thing.
Well, when you from the first DNC leaks, they're talking about how they've got the Hispanic vote knocked down.
It's in their best interests. Why would they not?
Yeah, it's just like, but just the whole, we've just been quite happy not to cover anything about civics. Just basically haven't been making the arguments because the bill, and on both sides, but basically emotional arguments rather than like more on the right wing Republican side. The guns thing.
Yeah, emotions is a very, very big part in politics these days because the general population doesn't check facts. Even us, as much as we would love to be perfectly cited, well, what can you do? but appeal to emotion.
I think it's kind of like time management. Like when you talk to a lot of people about these issues, they're like, "Oh, I've been busy. I can't look into." It's basically, you catch up with people. What have you been doing? Working. You working? Yeah, and that's, but it doesn't mean you don't have time. You just haven't allocated the time. It's
Priorities.
yeah, and of course, people. Oh, what's the quote? If you don't get involved in politics, you'll be ruled by lesser people. That's probably hacking it up, but it's like, oh, I just didn't look into it, etc. And you have people with terrible arguments who are the one that won because everyone was busy.
Hi Clinton. Hi Trump.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be widespread dissatisfaction of like, these are the best candidates.
Really? Yeah, most certainly not, or at least I'd like to hope not.
If you listen in past episodes of the show, I mean, my big thing is that with the amnesty, they could completely alter America to the point, basically giving a whole lot of illegal Hispanic immigrants citizenship, and the Republicans will never get in again. So a lot of people, you might not agree with this, but this is what a lot of people believe is this election is for the fate of Western civilization.
It's quite interesting. I mean, I think Western civilization will ultimately find a way to change itself, but in its old form, the current happenings around the world, it's not most certainly not going to remain the same. And I mean, as you mentioned, the Republican Party, I disagree that it will be the death of the Republican Party, certainly in its current form. But as it is a popular political party, they will ultimately change. They will have to change, because ultimately you need 51% of the vote, and so they will change in their policies and their beliefs in order to secure 51% of the vote to retain power, or at least try and get power again.
Which touches on a interesting point. Oh, screw the emails at this stage. What is popular isn't always right, and what is right isn't always popular.
I mean, you could argue that the Democratic and Republican parties really aren't very different at all.
Well, no, this is the whole thing. I mean, one of the things behind Trump is a whole lot of dissatisfaction about the conservatives conserved nothing. They've had huge, largest majorities they've had in it was the Senate or the Congress, or possibly both, and yet they basically just rolled over for anything Obama wanted.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, now that they've got the Senate majority, they are blocking his advances on things like gun control and such like. But a lot of the other things they have gone through.
And of course, one of the things that have gone through is the funding for groups in Syria, which a couple of those groups merged and turned into ISIS.
Yeah, I remember when the Syrian war started. Because it was the whole Arab Spring. So there was, from my memory, it was Tripoli, I think. No, not Tripoli. Tunisia. That was the one. It was Tunisia, and then it was Libya, and then it was Egypt, and then Syria, and then Ukraine had their thing as well. But that's
a couple of years
not
later.
Arab.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Syria thing. Weapons of mass destruction in Syria.
Oh, I wonder where I've heard this before.
Yes. But we see in the Podesta emails,
Oh, you said again.
Yep, okay, drink. Basically, there's an interesting email where, because a lot of Hillary Clinton's Wall Street speeches, which she's refused to publish, have have been included in these emails. So we have seen things like she's talking, I think it's with Goldman Sachs, and talking about how Saudi Arabia and Qatar are funding ISIS.
That's quite interesting. Does it actually? What does it say in the email to implicate that?
Well, you're a smart, intelligent young man to ask such a thing. Citation needed.
Yep, that's the first thing. You're right. Okay, so here we go. We have read said email more thoroughly. And in the email from John Podesta to Hillary Clinton, he states that the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia are providing clandestine financial and logistical support to ISIS and other radical Sunni groups in the region. Which is quite interesting considering American ties to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the other governments in the region and their many donations to the Clinton Foundation.
So, wait, they fund ISIS and Hillary Clinton? Is Hillary also a secret Muslim?
Well, I suppose that would explain Bill having multiple wives, but we must digress.
Yeah, I mean, just we're pushing for time. I mean, the recording goes so fast, but there is emails talking about the European migrant crisis and just I'll direct you onto a couple of sources to look into this. As I said before, Stefan Molyneux, who's spelled Stefan and Molyneux, Molyneaux.
Probably write that down in the comments because no one's going to remember that.
Oh yeah, when I put it on YouTube, I'll be able to have the links, but people listening to the radio. And also, if you go to Sargon of Akkad live streams, I watched an interesting one today, and just, I mean, a lot of these emails, you look at, she talks about into Wall Street groups, public and private positions. So basically, I'm telling you people one thing, but I actually believe another, and I'm probably going to be working towards those, what I believe privately.
Well, ultimately, it's politics. It's whoever gets the majority wins. So,
and of course, which public or private positions do you think Wall Street's backing her for?
Doesn't really matter to them as long as they get their money back.
I suppose the big point is there's always so much going on behind the scenes, and being an uninformed and compliant citizenry.
That really is a tongue twister. Citizenry.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of stuff that spells disaster for democracies.
I mean, ultimately, the best you can do is read what sources are available to you and decide for yourself. Because, I mean, ultimately, whilst the information that is presented in the media is biased, the more little pieces of information you have, the more of the story you can piece together. And, I mean, ultimately, it is interesting that whilst it may not be the entire truth, it is interesting what they want to know, what the narrative being put forward is in itself.
Yes, there's the narrative and then there are the facts. So, yes, look into it. There are a whole lot of people, Chelsea Johnson, Mike Cernovich, Stefan Molyneux, etc., which you can go and look at.
And the biggest thing is to have a big salt shaker and apply plenty of salt to everything.
And, of course, applying salt to New Zealand media, you'd just die of a heart attack. Just, oh my God, it's terrible.
Just like the fish and chip shop around the corner.
Okay, we shall leave that there. Oh, but except for if we're the web extended edition, which we're on now.
Okay, we are. All right, cool. Easy.
Hell, we've got like 18 minutes left, so, of the studio. So...
All right.
Now we're just kicking around in the post show, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the emails themselves don't actually, they aren't incriminatory in themselves. I think what's interesting is, well, the fact that she deleted them and kept them secret in a private server, and just the variety of content in it, which is not a part of the public eye, which people don't see. I'm not trying to say that Hillary Clinton is necessarily Satan herself. Well, I'm sure many people would disagree, but it's just very interesting to see the private lives of politicians and the many conflicts of interests that they do have.
Yes, because there was, of course, the first leaks that came from from Hillary, from the WikiLeaks. Now these ones are from a lot of her staffers. It sort of paints a picture, but as Scott Adam, who is the founder of the Dilbert, well, he's the guy who writes the Dilbert cartoons, but he's also
those ones.
Yeah, he's also a motivational speaker and hypnotist, and a very smart guy. He said, without there anything being directly from Hillary in these ones, it's not damning. Although one place I'd like to disagree, there is an email where they're talking about how, to somebody on Wall Street, she's talking about security concerns and how, like, when they go to Russia, things could be hacked in a nanosecond. So they take out their devices, they put them in a special box with the batteries taken out because you never know. And it's like, wait, what about all these other security breaches which aren't actually in question? You were just given this magic. She didn't intend to do it, which seemed to get her off from prosecution.
The thing I picked up on there is when they go to Russia. When are they planning to go in Russia? I mean, hopefully not in winter.
Oh, well, that's another thing. If you're still listening to our mad rambling at this stage, the Russian government has done this huge military exercise.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's basically for widespread disasters of any kind, but involve biological, chemical, and nuclear fallout.
Yeah, because the relations between the West and the East are at pretty much all-time low since the Cold War. Because we've got two hot conflicts at the moment. There's Ukraine and Syria. Both have one party backed by the West and one part backed by the Kremlin. What's quite interesting is you could go so far as to claim that the West, so USA and NATO and Russia, are already at war, but obviously not militarily, economically, and that with the price of oil, because Russia's economy depends on the price of oil. If it falls below a certain amount, and I cannot for the life of me remember what the certain amount is, the country loses money. So theoretically, if you want to defeat your enemy, you can make them go bankrupt without firing a shot.
And there's still basically sanctions over Crimea.
Most definitely.
Yeah, it's basically a new Cold War. I mean, you've got Trump, who's like, we've got to work out a deal with Russia, and Hillary's like, these guys are hostile aggressor. Now, I would like the US to work with Russia, for little things like they've got the world's biggest nuclear arsenal. Maybe being good terms with the other major nuclear superpower. They might not be a superpower these days, the Soviet Union was, but they've still got the nukes.
Yeah, they definitely have a great deal of influence still. I think we shouldn't make the mistake of going so far as to trust them. At least change our stance to one where we can work together and not actively try and destroy each other would be nice.
I mean, do you trust the Americans? To be honest,
I wouldn't trust anyone. I am very cynical on that matter.
well, to be honest, nobody in New Zealand politics, nobody trusts anybody in
No.
political power anymore.
No.
It's back in the day there used to be these huge party loyalties, and there's still people who are still fanatical, especially on the leftist side. But it's nobody. There's no great love for government or civics or politics. There's no trust.
Most definitely.
And of course, what reflection this has on Western civilization is probably a topic for another time. But and isn't it weird? I mean, the European Union, united Europe without Russia. I mean, they're Europe too.
Well, they're sort of half and half, because I mean they've got their major cities in, well, it's like the wop-wops of Europe essentially, but then a great deal of their landmass is in Greater Asia.
Yeah, they have. If you want to sort of, the Caspian Report YouTube channel does a brilliant thing on this, talking about the Russian mindset and how Moscow, which is the heart of Russia, pretty much. It's on the Great Northern European Plains. Now, the Russians say that sort of makes us quite vulnerable because there's no, natural barriers to prevent invading armies. So
Most definitely.
that's why they expanded east. And when you see the Soviet Union, which was, the successor to the Russian Empire, they stopped at boundaries like mountain ranges. They went all the way east to the Pacific. And why it's not the Balkans, the other ones, Estonia and Latvia and
The Baltic.
Baltic, that's it. Where they push to these natural barriers which they wouldn't have normally if they were just. So it's like we can be on just in the northern plains and we'll be rich, but we'll be vulnerable. Or we can bankrupt ourselves, pretty much spreading out and having all these places we can retreat to. And they chose, survival. We could be rich, but no, we want to make sure we survive.
Because I mean, the Russian planes, like from a military point of view, there's no real reason to go. You don't gain anything from holding the Russian territory. From in the west, in the Moscow area, they expanded west. Well, in the Great Wall, Berlin Wall, they had their satellite states. So if the NATO attacked them, then they would have to first go through West Germany, Poland, Hungary, and whatnot before they got to the Russian state. And that takes a great deal of work and many men in tanks and artillery and so on and so forth.
I mean, of my generation and probably yours, the big bad guy in Western civilization was Hitler. Where if you look at Stalin, who was the Western ally, or an ally to the West, he was far worse. He just, I mean, the Nazis were a terrible regime, but in terms of actual body count and just sheer brutality, even leading to the death of his own son, it's just well, of course, also what's his name, Chairman Mao in China.
The Chinese Communist Revolution was pretty ruthless. I mean, same with Vietnam, Cambodia, all those countries. Even the Japanese Empire was absolutely horrible in the Second World War. But that's digressing a lot.
Well, to spin it in a certain way, we've enjoyed this huge period of peace and prosperity, and it just feels like Western society is leading into this, dying a death by decadence.
Well, it all goes in cycles. I mean, Rome had to end. all good things come to an end.
Well, yeah, if you look at Stefan Molyneux did a big presentation on the fall of Rome, which is actually not just on the history, it's we're doing this stuff, devaluing our currency and large-scale migration from outside of people who aren't assimilated in and all that sort of thing.
At what point does it continue, or at what point does it cease to become Rome and become New Gaul or New Germania?
Well, it's just, it's not good for the civilization or the society. And if you're wondering, wait, we went far off emails. It's we're seeing a lot of games being played by the decadent elite. When Trump first, announced he was running, I just thought, vanity project for a billionaire. But he has taken a lot of principled positions and actually has said what a lot of Americans are thinking, which is covered somewhere in the Podesta emails. But, this is why they fear him. But
he most definitely says what he thinks, I will say that much. I think that's probably a good thing, considering the amount of back and forth we have had over the last 3 years. And no one's really had the guts to say anything that breaks the party line or breaks their traditional voter base.
Yeah, it's. I think we covered this somewhere before. What's right's not always popular, and what's popular isn't always right. It's like. I mean, if you look at the economics situation in the Western world, we're wealthy first world countries. We're in so much debt. It is. I mean, even just look at the average person. They're from school, pushed into university, huge student loans. That's just crippling for somebody starting out.
Yeah, I mean, I would not go so far as a lot of people do and say money is the root of all evil. I mean, ultimately, ultimately with banks and with trade, it means that people can move goods to other places of the world where they couldn't. Like, I mean, if you look in the Industrial Revolution, when banks and like in the Merchant Navy, where the P&I Club and Lloyd's started out, having a bank meant that you could trade with someone on the other side of the world without having to carry suitable goods to trade. So you could have, I forget the term, but it's like a check, so a certificate of value. And
banknotes are a whole lot easier to carry than gold.
Most certainly. You don't want to buy a drink with a quarter of a donkey, do you?
Well, do you? No.
That'd smell after a while.
Oh, I'm sure libertarians have some sort of position on that.
Good times.
And I haven't even been drinking.
You should do an episode where you do drink.
I have. If you look at the Karen Strong ones, I had more than a few drinks to begin with.
Nice.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll probably, as we're descending into madness, I think we'll stop it there.
Yeah, who knows where to go if we didn't.
But, yeah, I mean, I suppose the main takeaway is, that should have been for the normal one because of the web extended. Just make yourself aware. Know what's what. Probably don't talk to, your crazy conspiracy theorist friend, but, well, I don't know, maybe. Who knows?
You can, but just remember to bring the salt.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thanks, James, for being here.
No worries. Good times.
Yes, on the channel, we'll be doing some more coherent hangouts, which I suppose this is what the web extended post show, whatever. Yeah, I forgot to do my, big YouTube milestone, 100 subscribers. So I bumped it up to 150, which I'm almost at.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so yes, more coherent stuff coming. Well, actual coherent stuff coming in the future, but next few shows will be on the American election because it's the biggest show in town.
It's pretty good reality TV.
Yes, it's just the unfortunate real world consequences.
Oh, that's just water under the bridge.
Screw it all.
She'll be right.
Okay, always remember, have hope. There are people who love you.
Maybe.
Oh, that's cold. Okay, see you guys.